Meeting to order, April 28, 2015, the Committee of the Whole meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. And number 2, approval of agenda. Anybody care to approve the agenda? Any additions?
I'd like to put handicap access.
Handicap access? Okay.
Where would you put that?
Under other business, maybe, or?
Yeah.
The F, 6F, sorry. So, handicap
I think it's
accessibility.
a community grant request.
Do you want to add that to the agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. So do we put that under financial request?
Yes.
So 8A, and it's from who?
Associated Historic.
Okay,
Okay. We can, yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, we haven't approved,
We haven't approved the budget yet.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
We have been collecting them. But we
okay,
haven't made any decisions on any of them.
We want,
Uh,
the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Yeah,
so we can defer that one?
yeah, actually,
Yeah.
you should, if you don't mind giving that to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to defer it forever, I
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
just want to defer it
Yeah.
for,
okay,
Well,
thank you.
just don't put it on.
yeah,
All
I
right.
scratched it off, so.
Sorry about that.
Right, any other additions?
And
So
we'll-
so only the one, the handicap accessibility, is that correct? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded with the changes to the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Any conflict of interest declarations? Any conflicts there on the floor? Hearing none, we'll continue on to, guess there's no presentation. Number 4, business arising from the minutes. Is there any business arising from the minutes? CA Muse, do you have anything?
Nothing significant to add. There's the two that we're moving that we haven't moved considerably from one meeting to the next are the recommendation for the Montague Road is still not to your attention,
Okay,
and the other one is the municipal building assessment. We haven't completed our work on that
Okay.
either, so nothing significant to report.
all right. Move on to number 5, which is the financial report, and I do believe that is Marcia.
Alright, so attached is the financial report at March 31st, 2015, showing a surplus of $114,183 at our fiscal year end. Last month, at the end of February, in the report, it was showing a surplus of $285,450, which included was a prorated transfer from the reserves. Throughout the year, we prorate many numbers as we are unsure of what they will be until the end of the year when the actuals come in. The March surplus of $114,183 does not include a transfer from the reserves, and we are not recommending one to be done as we feel it is not needed with the surplus we have. Included in that $114,183 surplus, the D-transfer tax is the driving factor for the revenues, coming in at $113,000, which is $28,000 over the budgeted amount. In the expenses, we are showing a savings of $73,000 in general government services. That is basically the operations for admin, taxation, IT, basically went better than anticipated. There was a savings this year in the protective services, which is basically the half-year vacancy of the facility maintenance employee. And there was also a savings in fire protection and public works department training. The savings of the protective services basically offsets the over expenditure we see in transportation services, which is primarily the grant to the airport that was previously approved. Most of the savings in environmental health is dangerous and unsightly. We anticipated needed to cover most of these costs, which in some cases were taken care of by the residents themselves. Most of the surplus showing in public health services is the family residency grant and the, my mind is blank. The doctor recruitment.
Yeah.
Doctor recruitment, we always prorate an amount, and we never actually sure how many doctors will be brought in and at that time. The deficit environmental development is driven mainly by the payout to the Industrial Commission, which was also previously approved. And there was a slight savings in recreation, which a lot of times their programs gets funded by other provincial grants. Now, please keep in mind that our year end isn't officially closed yet at the end of March, that the number may change with more actuals coming in. I'm not sure if Alain maybe has something else to add to that, or if anybody has any questions.
Councillor Surratt.
Marcia, just I guess on anything coming in, is it anything unexpected, or is there certain things that, I mean, I don't want to know every little item, I'm saying,
No.
there could be something that it's an adjustment, would it be?
Yeah, there's, like the housing authority I haven't got the official bill yet, so I
I
kind of put
get
in
you.
a number
Yeah,
anticipating of what it would be, but that official number hasn't.
okay.
come in.
Those are the
So
little
it's just
minor
little
things that you may,
adjustments.
yeah.
There's
Thank you.
nothing that hasn't been recorded that is gonna make it, I don't feel that it's gonna make it a huge
No
difference.
significant change at all.
Okay,
We're-
okay,
We're not expecting surprises,
yeah, right on.
right? But we have set up provisions for certain expenses that could be different. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
Okay. Any more questions, or is that your report, Marcia? All right. No more questions?
Make a motion that we accept the report as
Okay,
presented.
seconded. Moved by Warden Doctorow, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay, thank you. Move on to number 6, other business, and for decision, 6A is 2015 grants to organization budget. I think that's something that's one of council's top priorities for 2015 is community infrastructure improvement. This priority aligns with our strategic plan under objectives 2.4 and 3.4, and our integrated community sustainability plan under objectives 4.1 and 4.3. So in an effort to help improve community infrastructure, staff has contacted the local community halls to learn of their needs, but council could also prioritize funding through the grants to organization program and help support applications to other provincial and federal funding opportunities. So I guess in effort to continue work on this priority, council could consider a one-time increase in the grants to organization budget by $10,000, which would help support local community halls and other infrastructure improvements. Do you have anything to add on that, CMUs?
Just simply one thing. I had the number of $10,000 is a number that I'm suggesting. What you intend to do as council can be less or more than that. What I'm simply doing is highlighting the fact that we've established the club infrastructure as a priority for the current year, yet we have not increased our funding for the nonprofit grants to nonprofit organizations. So I think it's probably wise for council to consider doing that, particularly if that's what your priority is. From my perspective, what we will do from a budget perspective is I've already factored that in, right? I've already factored in a $10,000 in the budget, which is still not balanced and still not still not ready for you. but you know, there's a variety of different places that money can come from. And, you know, one of which is the operating reserve, which, to Marcia's point earlier, we anticipated bringing in quite a bit from the reserve last year to support projects that either didn't happen or got deferred. so that money is clearly still in the reserve. And so a number of 10,000 appeared reasonable to me, but if you wish that to be more, then have the discussion. You don't have to necessarily make a motion on that today, but seeing as we're going to analyze grants to organizations at the second part of this meeting, we should at least have an idea what number we're dealing with.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So council can choose to set that by motion today, and then use that motion to help them in the assessment, in the second meeting, right? So I think that's clear. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, having gone through quite a few budgets with you, CA Muse, that I figured that 10,000 wasn't just pulled out of the hat. There was rhyme and reason to it, so,
It was a little bit of a rhyme.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, Councillor Surratt, you have a question?
If a motion was made for that, you've explained a few of the questions that I had in the back of my mind. If the budget is not balanced, that's my concern. If we're running a risk of having to put the rate up, or do some other things, that 10,000, if we made a motion now that we accept 10,000, or we go to 20, or we go to 5, can that be dropped back? Because if we don't know yet if we're over or not in our budget, if we're going to be balanced or not.
Well,
Is there a way to make a motion to?
yeah, you can give direction if you're not comfortable with setting that officially by motion. You can set some direction for us in anticipation of the second part of our meeting.
Right.
Now, the motion that we will be making at the end of that meeting will have the amount, right? So either way, you probably have to make a decision today about that.
Yeah.
If you're looking at 5, 10, 15, 20,000, I can assure you that will have no impact on the rates. And what we will be recommending as we get into the draft budget is that the rates will remain the same. Now, it will not be, now, the only exception might be some of the user fees. What I'm referring to is commercial and residential tax rates. So the Tuscan sewer and the West Pumlico sewer, they have to go to their subcommittees, and there are recommendations at that area, but we are not recommending an increase in the rates for residential, commercial. We have no intentions of recommending that this year. So because it's a priority, Councillor Surratt, we would make it work. We would not do something else
Thank you.
in order to do that.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
All right. Councillor Muse?
If we were to increase that, okay, we've already gone over the each and every one of us, and I saw where there was an average. Would we be able to change, where would that 10,000 go? In the spring one, in the fall one, or could we maybe redo our average here by?
Yeah, what I'm suggesting with the recommendation is that the money would be for the spring session, which you'll be discussing
now,
today, and the entire amount would be on infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay.
So whatever you decide, so my recommendation is if you decided to increase it, it would only be on the applications from the nonprofit societies that have, like, clubs, infrastructure improvements, which is what your priority was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would those averages are there to help you make a decision. Ultimately, the decision can be different than those averages.
Exactly, that's right, I realize that, but a lot of times, like, we go pretty much with what the average is anyway. I mean, it's a balance between everybody's opinion of what should be going in there. So, no, I was just wondering if that would be in effect for this time,
Yes.
and that some of those halls could get a little more than what was,
Yeah.
what's indicated in the average now. Okay.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Donaldson?
Yeah, Chris just informed me the average is based on 7 that have put their application, have filled out their grants. There's still 2 more. But my question is, could it be sent out separately and just have the organizations that qualify, and you just spend your $10,000 each councilor's not gonna get $10,000.
No?
So
Overall.
how are we gonna do that? We're gonna divide it up between all of us? And we just reapply it to one of the halls or two of the halls that we feel comfortable? Are we gonna make a collective decision, or?
I would hope it'd be a collective decision, not unlike how you've done the averages. You've done your averages independently, you've made your decisions independently. You may actually choose to say, well, look, we've allocated, $30,000. We got an extra 10, let's just allocate it the same way that we did, except everybody gets their portion of that increased grant. That's an option for you. So you could do it that easily, or you could take a look at the individual applications that are looking to install heat pumps or change their roofs or whatever, and say, well, if they're asking for 8 and we're giving them 4, maybe to finish the job they need closer to 8, right? So you could have any variety of discussion in that respect. But I am suggesting that whatever that increase is, be restricted to the applications that we have identified as infrastructure.
Basically the top column.
Correct, exactly. There might be, how many, Chris? 15?
20,
Are there 20?
up to 20.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
Okay.
however we do it, it's fine with me.
yeah, okay, Councillor LeBlanc.
Just mirroring what Alain said, I suggest that's exactly how we do it. I mean, there's a request for 97 and we only had, with the averages 24 allocated, we could just add 10 to that. And if we do choose, like we normally do, because we all want to give back to our communities, to take an average, I mean, it would just make the average higher for the infrastructure. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah.
That's how I would suggest we do it. Anyway, just my 2 cents. That's all.
Okay,
So to be clear, we can have that discussion in the second piece. The first piece today is really, are you interested in doing that? And if so, how much? That's the guidance we'll need to move that into the direction.
yeah,
Yeah.
all right, Councillor Surratt.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the extra $10,000 for grants to halls and other infrastructures.
Okay, been moved and seconded.
Question?
All those in favor? Contrary? Carried. Thank you. Move down to 6B, and this comes from Create Arts Center. April 21st, dear Mr. Muse, this is about bylaw number 9. On July 27, 2014, we launched Harbor Lights Concert Series, scheduled to run throughout the summer. We're continuing the concert series for 2015 with concert schedules from 7 to 10 p.m. In an attempt to ensure our compliance with the municipal bylaw, we humbly request a without prejudice or precedent exclusion or amendment for the duration and dates of the Harbor Light Concert Series. Did they put the
No.
dates? But anyway,
I did call Walter at supper time. I read that a couple of times and there was no mention of how many nights a week or anything. And he said it would be on Thursday nights when they start, and maybe a couple Saturday nights in the summer, and that's all.
okay, okay.
But one night, mostly one night a week.
Yeah. So I guess our aim and mission is to move artistic thread of our company is to provide accessible, affordable vocal and music lessons. And anyway, it goes on and on about the concert series. So for them to get a exclusion or an amendment, what do we have to?
We did that last summer.
We did.
But just for the
It requires a motion of this council again this year to give them the permission to do that. I will note that the last hour of that concert series is the only time
Yes.
that is beyond
Yeah.
9 o'clock.
so from 7 to 9 they're good. So it's the 9 to 10 that's beyond the bylaw. So that's really what you're either giving or not giving permission
Okay.
for.
And
All right.
the previous exemption expired September 30th.
We
Okay.
didn't have a problem last year.
There was no complaints to this.
No complaint.
okay.
We received no complaints.
All right. Councillor Muse.
No, that was my question. If we'd had any complaints last year, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nope. We need a motion. Councillor Surratt.
Just this should be in our existing bylaw, that if I remember right, that the people have to be notified by a letter. Is that what our policy or our bylaw? I remember on the policy committee, we looked at that, and we have written so much distance, if it's 1,000 meters or something, if I remember right, when we discussed that noise bylaw. Am I right? Would you have it in front of you, Chris, or on that?
That's what I'm looking for.
You know, as long as that's met, but it's in our policy, if I remember right.
Let me just pull the bylaw for you.
I believe it's only if the activity is to go over 7 days in duration.
Oh, so next door neighbors, if it's just a one night thing in there, we've passed permission. I thought we had said that the people, but anyhow, I guess I'm wrong. That's fine. Yeah.
Bylaw number 9.
I'll make a motion that we,
Yeah, it's,
Seconded.
we give them a request.
Okay. It's been moved by Warden Dontram, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, is that right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Do you want to put a deadline on that exemption, a date?
Do we know when the last one is, Warden Dontram?
Last year, we had September 30th as the deadline,
I was told it was mid-September as well this year.
Okay.
but that's up to
Yeah, we add that to the motion.
September 30th.
Yeah.
good idea.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Next one, 6C, Proclamation VON Week. And that's on from May 17th to 23. It's a one-page attachment. I think that goes on every year. I think we're pretty familiar with this one. I guess they just want a motion to, for us to declare VON Week, May 17th to 23rd, 2015. And our theme, this is celebrating our past, building our future.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, it's been moved. Councillor Surratt, I guess you have your light on?
Yep, I do. I was just gonna ask you, didn't we pass a motion one time that declarations, and maybe I'm wrong, that declarations for stuff like this, we didn't do it, but I thought we had passed a motion on that, because somebody wanted to raise a flag for this or do that. But, you know, I thought we had passed a motion a few years back on that, but,
We did.
and I'm not pinpointing the VON.
Yeah, no. if
No,
that's-
we did.
We follow
did.
policy, I would think.
I don't know that we have a policy, but we did pass a motion. You're quite
I
right.
remember that, yeah.
I think, we put it on the agenda because it was local.
Yes.
Perhaps we shouldn't have put it on the agenda at all. But you're quite right. There was direction about 3 years ago.
Yeah,
around
but
that.
we had-
In what, sorry,
Councillor LeBlanc?
in what sense?
Well, we were getting a lot of this week is, Flag
Right,
Week,
yeah,
or
okay.
this week is this, can you send us a proclamation for this and a proclamation for that? And so it was starting to get quite a few of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, and so there was just, the council felt like they were spending a lot of time with these proclamations, but it
Spinning wheels,
wasn't
yeah.
really,
Yeah, okay.
not necessarily in the interest of the municipality, it was more in the interest of the organizations, and
Right.
they weren't really local organizations, so I think that's what the reason was.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay.
There are-
All right.
So, I apologize, I
Yeah,
think based
no,
on the motion, I
no.
probably
I
shouldn't,
was unaware of that.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, I.
should we just send them maybe a letter explaining and,
Just a congratulations letter might be in order,
yeah,
because it is on the agenda, and
Yeah.
we probably should do that.
yeah, and just saying that we don't, it's policy not to,
Yeah.
but that we, congratulate them and,
Yeah.
so. Do we need a motion to write a letter, or is that just a formality?
I think, it'll happen regardless.
Okay. All right, okay. All right, so we'll move on to 6D, which is the COMFIT program letter of request. And this letter is coming from Neil McKenzie, who's the chair of the Green Energy Committee. I would like to request letters from each council requesting that the province restart the COMFIT program as soon as possible. The province is determining the value of continuing the program and also which municipalities would still want to take part in this program. These letters need to demonstrate the need of our municipalities to continue under the COMFIT program, that we want this program to continue, and that we intend to develop more projects under the program. So, do you have anything else to add? I guess it's pretty straightforward. It's just a letter of letter of support, so.
Yeah, so the province has closed the COMFIT project, the COMFIT program, because they're reviewing the rate. Because the rate was quite generous
Yeah.
for the small-scale wind turbine projects, such as the one that we're contemplating in
Overton?
Overton. So if we wanted to do one tomorrow, we couldn't, because we wouldn't be able to, they've frozen the applications. And so, you know, we think that,
There are many approved
yes,
already.
that's
but-
correct.
Yeah.
But
it's frozen.
but they're frozen, like any new applications won't be accepted just at this time. And so I guess this council should ask themselves whether or not, if, you know, if this first project is successful, whether you want to do that again. And there certainly are opportunities to do it again. From a staff perspective, there's no harm in sending a letter of support.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably positives to a letter of support.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure which light came on first, but Councillor Surratt?
I'd like to make a motion that we send a letter to the to the province, to, you know, in respect to Neil McKenzie's letter, to restart the COMFIT program as soon as possible.
Okay, yeah, moved and seconded. Councillor Donaldson,
I just wanted to ask, is our application in for the joint venture?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
okay.
And approve.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes.
And approve was your comment?
Well, approved, we still have to do community consultation,
Right, yeah.
but the pre-approval, like we got in,
Yeah.
we got in
Yeah.
time.
That was my question, because it was
Yes.
kind of unclear the way we were talking about it earlier.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry,
Yeah,
my
no,
apologies.
no, thank you for clarifying that. So, we have a motion on the floor. Any more questions
I
or
think-
comments?
Yeah, I think they have stopped it for now, for the time being, but they expect to restart later, I think. That's what I kind of understood.
Yes.
But maybe this will rush it if we, you know.
Won't hurt.
No, we can certainly send a letter.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Thank you. 6E, operating and capital budgets, 2015 priorities with an attachment of 11 pages. And I'll pass that one over to CA Muse. Do you believe that's yours?
Yes. So the detail in the budget is not yet completed. We're 95% through. But what we wanted to do is highlight some of the trends that are happening. And so we did that in graph form for you. And permit me to go through some of this because this is a late edition. So what you'll find is there's, you know, quite a few graphs there. I'll try to be brief. So try to be brief. So what you'll see in front of you is the first graphs are based on revenue. And so residential and resource tax, I've put them together because they share the same rate. So basically what you see is a graph showing the total revenues and over the past 4 years, and then 2015 is the new budget. Okay, so 2011, where you see 2011, that's actually 2011, 2012. So it's fiscal year beginning in 2011, ending in 2012. So the upcoming budget obviously is 15, ending in 16. Okay, so that's just the way that Procom does it. I probably should have changed it, but I never did. So what we're seeing is that it was about 4.25 million in 2011, and it's about 4.7 million in 2015 in the current year. So what we see is there was a sharp increase in 2011, 2012, and then what you see is a fairly consistent line, not as sharp of an increase. Now that's based on two reasons. One is the market, right? So the market softened, and so none of these increases, by the way, are due to increases in rate. These are 100% increases in assessment. And so the cap on assessment does in fact restrict the amount of revenue that you generate, but the market is also lighter, okay? So what you're seeing there is, you know, it's been about 2 to 3% per year. This year, I believe that the percentage is again consistent with that. So yes, about 2%, a little bit more than 2%, in fact. Just double check. Yeah, a little over 2%. So, which is fairly light. Like it's but you know, I expect, you know, that there's other factors that play there. So obviously some of it is development when you're not, when there's not new houses and there's not new construction, that's obviously having an impact on new assessments, right? So, so that's what's showing there. It's still positive, it's still going up. There are some communities in Nova Scotia that number is going down. And so we're still showing an increase, and that's positive, okay? Now, what we should also be aware of is residential is approximately 80% of our total taxes. So including the resource, it's actually more than 80%. And so this is a major driver of our uniform assessment. And so why that's significant for us is that some of the costs that we pay the province are based on that uniform assessment, okay? So for some of those, so for example, I cited an example of somebody, of a municipality going down. Well, their costs to the province would also have gone down because their assessment went down, just as an example. So the second graph is the deed transfer tax. So so now we have a pretty solid trend on this. What we see is it's been as high as about 118,000, and it's been as low as 90 something thousand. It hovers on average a little less than 100,000. Where you see the decrease in 2015 is my conservative budgeting.
Oh. This
Okay.
was my question.
So we don't know, in fact. So the deed transfer, see the advantage with the residential tax is we know what that number is going to be. And so it's our responsibility to collect that money, but the bill goes out and we know what the bill is going to be. The deed transfer tax is dependent on activity, and we don't know that, okay? So we typically conservatively budget that number, okay? And so, okay. The next one is legislative net expense. So we're into, this is an expense one. They're not necessarily in any particular order. I'm just reflecting some of the trends. So where you see net expense actually refers to there are revenues that we receive that offset some costs. In a lot of cases, that's what happens with our financial statements. You don't typically see the financial statements presented that way. You see total revenue and you see total expenses. But in a lot of our activities, the revenue that's generated is dependent on the activity, right? So for example, we might have $30,000 in day camp revenues, right? So if we just look at recreation as an expense and not consider the fact that there's a revenue stream that the recreation department is generating, we're not seeing the full picture. So these charts include the revenues that are directly attributed to the activity, okay? Another example we'll see later on is active living. We receive a $25,000 grant for active living coordinator, right? So if we just show that without the grant, it shows that it costs about $60,000 or $70,000, but that's not in fact what it costs the taxpayers, right? So legislative net expense. Legislative expense is all things council, okay? Which includes conferences, FCM, everything. So that's actually a new change. what we did was we took everything, all of the expenses that related to council, is the ones that are large enough to matter, and we put them all under legislative. And what we found is that it's been extremely consistent, even if the graph looks a little spiky. It's been very consistent from year to year, and in fact, some of the spike in 2013 was due to the fact that very few people actually went to conferences in that particular year. So the conferences, depending on how many people go, it can have an impact on the bottom line. So the legislative has been as high as 235 and as low as 207. Sorry, that's not true. As high as 230 and as low as 198. But it's been like steady. So the next one is commercial tax. And so what you'll see here is the numbers on the left-hand side. It makes it look like there's a sharp increase in commercial tax, but the increase isn't actually that sharp. The numbers are quite tight if you look at the total revenues of commercial tax. So what's happened with commercial tax is it was fairly steady for a while. Business occupancy came offline, and we were increasing the rate, but at some point we did not increase the rate as much as the property that the business occupancy was eliminated. So you see decrease in commercial tax in that year. And so it has gone up by, a small percentage every year, commercial tax. Now, keep in mind that the commercial tax has been fairly steady. If we look at our statistics provincially, our commercial tax is considered to be yellow. Red, green, yellow in the financial conditions index. It has been close to yellow in most cases because our commercial tax revenues as a percentage of our total tax revenues is a little lighter than the average. Not a lot. It's basically in the middle. Of course, that can change very quickly.
That's kind of not fair in one sense. In the yellow, you're close to the yellow, but like, hey, we don't have it, that's all. It seems unfair to me that they kind of penalize you because you don't have it.
Well, we're primarily a residential area, and so I think what happens is that depending on where you are geographically, this can be higher or lower. So the municipality of Yarmouth, for example, they're probably yellow if not red, because they're a bedroom community to the town, and so they're almost exclusively a residential. So, but that's just the way their community is built, right? You can't, and so we're further away from what you would consider potentially the center. So there's a bit more commercial activity. If only we could count the boats, that thing would go shoo. Anyway, but that's what's driving that. So then administrative costs is the next graph. And what I'll be doing is, if there's any major concerns, I'll be identifying them as we go. Okay, so the net admin costs looks like a smiley face. I think, again, this one's been fairly steady. We always budget high on this one. We usually are fairly conservative in the budgeting because there's a lot of contingency in the administrative side of things. Like, so what happens if this breaks? What happens if that breaks, right? So there's a lot of contingency. But what we see here is that it generally costs between 300 and 275. So it's been fairly consistent. Tax assessments, rebates, and exemptions there's a little spike in 2014, a drop, and then it increases this year. The drop is due to what had been, there was a trend that was happening. So tax assessment, rebates, and exemptions includes the cost to administer taxation here, the assessment costs, any exemptions to nonprofit groups and to individuals, rebates, it includes it here. So what we saw was some of the nonprofit organizations were coming offline, they were being sold. So clubs were being sold. There are a couple of instances where there's one where a business took over the facility, so that those are no longer they're no longer exempt, right? So we were seeing a trend where they either were being their major adjustments in their assessment decreases, or they're actually coming off as being exempt. And then it spikes up this year because of your decision to include a portion of Nikhil's tax as an exemption. So that spiked it up again, okay? So how that works is every organization that has a tax exemption is reflected in our revenue, but it's also shown as an expense, okay? The next one I find fascinating. It is tax revenues from wind turbines. And so this includes, this included for years only Pubnico Point. It now includes the COMFIT projects in Little River. So starting this year, there will be 3 sources of income from those turbines. So last year we had one turbine come online and bring revenue. It was only partial year. So in 2015 will be a full year, and there'll be 2 partial years for the second and third turbine that were installed on Black Pond Road. So in 2016 you'll see this increase again. Okay, so it's gone from 168 to 200 and something.
So like the ones in West Palmyra or in Lower West, those ones in Camoes Hill or Little River, they're not on assessment, they're on
Correct.
kilowatts or whatever rating.
Property,
That's right.
Yeah,
the property is assessed.
The property is assessed.
yeah,
The turbine itself is exempt.
yeah.
But there's an agreement, that's why it's shown separately on our books. It's by legislation, not by assessment.
Yeah.
So it's, right now, it's like, so the Pubnico Point was $4,500 a megawatt, and it was subsidized by $1,000 a megawatt from the province, still to this day. And so that increases by 1% every year. But the new ones they're indexed to inflation, and I think the current rate is 6,400-ish per megawatt, right? So those are 1.99 megawatts, so you're getting about $12,000, a little over $12,000 per turbine per year in revenue. So that's 170,000 gone up to 200,000. Information technology has spiked this year. 2 reasons why. It's almost always, within a very, very tight budget. It's gone up this year for 2 reasons. One, we've taken all the software charges and put them under IT. So where they used to be scattered all over the place, they're now all in one place. So that actually increases. It doesn't increase the amount we're paying, but it makes it look like we are, because we're putting it all in IT. And the second one is the capital equipment. Right now, we're still working on that number. We're trying to pull that down, and I think we are going to pull that down a little bit more. So the grants to organizations, what you see there is a spike. One of them this assumed that the 10,000 would be approved. Okay, and also the other reason why that spiked is there's a $28,000 amount that we had committed to École Belleville so that they could finish their multipurpose tennis court. And that motion was for the current year, the year that we're in now. So that's showing in your budget. Everything else is essentially the same. Should I slow down or speed up or get it done, Mr. Warden?
Continue.
Okay. All right, policing, not much I can say about this. It goes up 2 or 3% a year. It was at $720,000 4 years ago. It's now at $820,000. So on average, do the math, it's about $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
And that's beyond our ability to control. So net fire and EMO. So I've included EMO and fire together, and this does not include any area rates. It's just operations, and so it's spiked a little bit this year. So, and most of that is driven by the fire department grants. Typically, the fire department grants have been between $5,000 and $6,000 a year. It's basically been inflation. What I will be recommending to council for your consideration in the future is that number actually almost double. So, and the departments need them. They need the money, and So we're suggesting that the typical increase was 5 to 6, it'll be closer to 10 this year in the operating grant. Some of that is offset by decreases in training expenses. They didn't use their full budget last year. So I've decreased that to offset some of the increase in the grants. And other increases include insurance and other costs, okay? That's typically fairly steady with a slight increase every year. So the increase this year is a little sharper.
The question, so you say that they never use the training budget. Is it because most of our firefighters are already trained, or is it because there's less firefighters or no new ones coming online, or?
I can't answer that question accurately.
Okay.
We're in the process of asked Janine to help to establish who in fact is trained and who, right? Because some of the training you do once and you're good, but then there's other training that you have to do once every 2-3 years. So, I think we overestimated the budget last year. We put more than I think we needed. That's one of the things that's driving that. And the other thing that might be driving that is training manuals. So sometimes we don't have to pay, and then all of a sudden we have like $6,000 or $7,000 worth of manuals that we have to buy on behalf of the department. So I think there's some truth in some people being trained and don't require as much. I think there's also truth in us not getting a heck of a lot of volunteers lining up to train either. So we're trying to get a handle on that.
Thank you. The Fire Association meeting that sorry about that.
Yeah,
I
go
should
ahead.
have my book.
Actually, I was gonna ask
But
you
the-
if you had an opinion, so.
Because at the Fire Association, which I'm the member, and so is Danny, we see, and you're bang on that, and Calvin, there's less volunteers, and a lot of them have been trained. This is what's going on. Some departments just don't do any, it's hard to get them to do it. They don't have a lot of volunteers, but yeah, they're capped and they're maxed out, the people they can get.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, you like to see some unspent budget money, but when it comes to fire departments, I don't necessarily want to see that, because, these are the people protecting our properties and us, so, but anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue
So
on.
we think that shift will be more relevant for them. So Public Works, there's it looks like a fair increase this year. Again, this is a situation where we allocated differently. So where we had a facilities maintenance person at 75% in this department, we're now showing it at 100% in this department. It used to be 25% in the recreation. So the cost hasn't increased, it's just simply reflected here in its entirety. And the other is increased expected maintenance costs, including snow removal, but also around some well-needed work on our properties that have been,
Neglected?
that's a strong word. They need more tender, loving care than they've received. How's that? And
Right.
so we're expecting that will actually increase our costs, at least for this year. So net transportation, road trail ferry, no real change there from prior years. You'll see a spike. That spike is two reasons. This was when we did the trail improvement, when we helped the Trail Association with their improvements. So that was $34,000 we invested in 2013, and in the same year, we also spent $27,000 in ferry restoration work. So that happened both in 2013, so you see the spike, and then it comes back down to normal in 2014-15. Most of that is Department of Transportation, what we pay for maintenance of roads. Airport operations, won't spend a lot of time here, only because we spent a lot of time on this. This thing has increased. You see a spike in 2013 and in 2014. What we're proposing this year is that I have a budget of 242, 10 of it is a contingency. So 232 is expected to be their operating grants for the year. Now, that doesn't include any reductions for taxation. That's the full cost, right? So where we have a tax agreement, that's showing under our commercial revenues. If you remember, our commercial revenues was showing an increase. That was one of the reasons why. Okay. Waste collection, really not a lot to add here, other than it goes up by about $30,000 or $40,000 per year, or it has at least the past couple of years. What's driving that cost is the collection contract goes up by about $10,000 a year. It has gone up about $22,000 this year from contract to contract, so there was a bigger jump. Also, there is an increased need to replace compost bins. A lot of your compost bins that you purchased years ago are at end of life, so we're seeing a big spike in that request. So our community, and when I look at the reports, Argyle is way up comparatively to the others. Now I don't know what that means.
A lot
Right?
of them got run over by the plow.
It could be that. It could be that people are moving in and they're happy to be in Argyle, or people are moving out and taking the green bin with them. I don't, so we're just trying to figure that out, actually. So we'll get some more detail out of Waste Check. But we always have a tendency to budget conservatively here because it is based on volumes, and the volumes can change, right? So not only are we collecting it, we're also recycling it and putting it in the landfill or putting it in organics, and that's where the volume uncertainty is. So we usually do pretty well with the budget. I think the budget in actual is closer now than it was in the past, so just warning you. Medical recruitment has been fairly steady. There's a slight spike there. We've spent more money on we used to spend more money on recruitment and less on medical clinics, and so there's a trend now that the medical clinic expenses are coming down, particularly in Harbour South, because there's more doctors that are paying rent, but we're still paying recruitment fees. At some point, that will probably drop off considerably because we've made significant investments in doctor incentives, and at some point that may in fact slow down, right? So right now we're expecting it to be fairly the same. We have an HHR meeting tomorrow that could change
The
things.
residency program is going to help us too, I guess.
We hope so.
Hopefully.
We hope so.
Yeah.
It at least allows us to talk to doctors directly that have been in the community for years. So community development expense is pretty steady. 2014, there was a considerable drop because it was a vacancy in 2014. I'm not expecting any major differences there. Regional and local economic development looks like an M. There's been eaves and troughs. The demise of SWASDA and the Industrial Commission issues reflected in 2012, and then the absence of regional economic development initiatives in 2013 dropped it down, and then up again in the prior year for the Industrial Commission commitments that we made. And what we're expecting now is a more balanced number. Senior safety didn't exist in 2011 and has been extremely consistent year to year. Not much to add there. Net regional and local tourism right now the budget is probably overstated. We are working on understanding our grant situation right now. We still have information waiting. So typically we are in probably in the 70 range, 70 to 80. We usually commit about 60,000 to YASTA, and then we usually have regional initiatives. So right now we're showing closer to 100. So there's a little bit, the budget probably needs to be adjusted if we're going to make this thing balance. Recreation, for now, is including a couple of new things. One you have approved based on your priorities, which is major repairs on ball fields that are needed. This is the whole TLC component that I was talking about. So that's up. So last year we spent 18,000 in repairs on various facilities, and we are now budgeting 47. that should cover everything that we want to do with the ball fields, and probably, and hopefully, and then some, but we won't know until we go out and price. And so the plan is to focus on the outer rim of the ball fields, to restore the tracks on the back of and also to reset the dirt in the infield. That's some of like the Wedgeport and the Pubnico. Pubnico they've done a lot of work on. Wedgeport needs a lot of work. I think Wedgeport's probably the one that needs it the most. So that's an increase there. I've also I've also included for now a request for a part-time office manager for recreation, active living, and potentially community development. I haven't prepared any recommendation on that yet, but these numbers do include. We have included it here for discussion and consideration.
A request to where?
Sorry, from the recreation department.
Oh, to us.
To myself, to ask council for.
Okay, sorry, I thought you meant the
some-
province. Yeah.
No, internally, to ask for additional admin support. So that, there's no recommendation on that as of yet, but it is included in the number that you see there, and the number is 182,000, has been as low as 117, in years that we haven't had major capital work. Active living, active living has been very consistent. 2012, we had a vacancy. Active living typically is between 28 and 38,000, depending on projects. Library costs, again, very consistent. There was a vacancy in 2014, Pubnico, otherwise everything is very much the same. Courthouse and archives, there is a slight increase. They are looking at a capital project for the courthouse painting project. They have a retouch job that they need to do, so that's included there. So that request is $12,000. Usually their budget is between 124 and 140. They're at 165 at this time. School board appropriation, not much to say about that other than the fact that it used to be 1.35, now it's 1.5, and that was 4 years ago. So those costs are climbing, and we don't have any control over that. So that was a long presentation, a lot of information. Not expecting what my expectation would be to give you an impression of what's going on in each of the major areas. So what we will be doing subsequent to this is sending you the numbers that back up this information, so you can see for yourself where the numbers are changing from year to year. And so it will show the multi-year, okay? So it'll show, so I think it's important for council not only to see what we budgeted and what we did in a year, but actually see how it happened over time. And so we'll send that to you outside of the meeting, and then of course, when we come back and talk about the budget, you'll have that information. And my only warning is the 2015 is likely going to change, but obviously the previous years will remain the same. So are there any questions or comments about what we're presenting here now? And again, keep in mind, this is not completed in its entirety, and I have not in any way shown you how the transfers in and out of funds will be impacting the budget. I haven't done that at this time.
Okay. All right. Any questions from anybody? No? Guess everybody's clear on that. Thank you, CAMUs. Move on to 6F, which is handicap accessibility. That's you, Councillor Surratt.
Okay, if I could just add, and I'm not bringing anything up, great ideas, but I was just thinking that I've been here 7 years, and some have been here longer, and I know that it's been a concern to handicap access. I also realize that we're working on a building and numbers for a building. I would just want to pass this by council, and our CAO, of course. Is there a way that you could put maybe, I'll just put it in simple words, a piece of plywood where the steps come up and put a rail, so people, something that's not expensive, if you know what I mean. So half of the steps would be steps, the other half would be a platform and with a railing, so people maybe that can't go up steps at least could maybe walk. Now, I know there'd be probably questions there. Is it too steep? Does it meet the fire regulations? Maybe because you couldn't get somebody that fell down and got hurt. I remember one year, somebody passed out or something happened, and they tried to get her out, and they couldn't get out of the building. So that may not work. I'm just throwing something here at council. What about the front door? I'm talking here about the back, the side door where we park our cars. What about up front, something that may not be too expensive? Put a platform that you could gradually rises that comes in that these people could walk, and they're on at least the top floor, because I think most of what I'm hearing is people when they come to pay their taxes or stuff like that. But again, maybe this is too much money spending if we're, and I'm throwing every angle here. If we're looking at a building, maybe it's throwing money away, we could say. But maybe it's an idea that could work. Maybe that making the walkway going to the front might be a $10,000-$15,000 thing. And after all, we are a municipal building, and this has been talked about a lot. And I like this to see what council, if they think it's an idea, maybe we could pass it on. Maybe it should have been a notice of motion, but I thought I'd just bring it up. And maybe it's no good. Maybe we should wait for the building to be, what we decide on the building. I just want to throw that out, what you guys think.
Councillor LeBlanc.
It's no good.
Councillor Surratt, you raised a darn good point. There's no doubt about it. Quite frankly, in my opinion, the point you're raising and the issues there, it should just speed up the process of what we're trying to do, in my sense. We're not going to put a Band-Aid. I mean, personally, I don't want to put a Band-Aid on something. We've been talking about this. I don't want to spin our wheels. I don't want to spend a cent more than anyone else does on a building. It's not a priority, but per se to our taxpayers, but we need it. I suggest we, in my opinion, we don't Band-Aid the situation, we just speed things up, because evidently there is a problem. There's no doubt about it that we have an accessibility problem, and that's a grave concern to a lot of people. But not that staff isn't working on a solution, just I don't think we should fix something in the meantime. I just think we should just get it done to the most convenient way, obviously, to the taxpayers out there, that less costly, more bang for our buck. That's it, my 2 cents.
Okay. Councillor Muse.
Just a question, maybe I didn't quite understand what you meant by a platform, going up this, platform just going up the stairs?
Yeah, something even that simple, but maybe it's too steep.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm way out of whack.
You would never get a wheelchair up.
There you go. I wasn't thinking of a wheelchair in that sense, sorry. Maybe just somebody could walk, if they can't go up steps, but on a front platform, maybe quite steep.
That would be worse. That would be worse.
Yeah, regulations.
To me, that would be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
but
looking at it how it would be,
Yeah.
just to climb on something that's flat like that, that steep, I'm not sure if that would be a good idea or not.
It wouldn't pass code.
Oh, it certainly wouldn't pass code, for
I
sure.
would never want to.
No,
For sure.
we and this might have been prior to you coming in, Guy, actually. We had done an assessment when we had there's available funding federally on seniors accessibility, and there was a $25,000 grant that we applied for and got denied. When we did that work, we tried to do exactly what you're suggesting, and so we brought in contractors to take a look at how it would work with code. And the issue is the ramp and the height at which the ramp has to be, and the limited space that we have on this property. In fact, the contractor that we've asked to provide a recommendation had actually recommended a very long ramp that actually came in on the second floor. So he was actually saying you'd have to put in another door, like where the kitchen is, for example. And I mean, the thing would have looked like,
No.
an escape route, right? So we didn't get the funding, but that's our limitation, unfortunately. Like, the code won't allow us to do. Now I think we probably could get there, but at the cost of our parking lot.
Yeah.
So using the space in the parking lot, you can get the angle and eventually get there, right? But again, you know, you're taking the parking lot and you're destroying a piece of that. So we, at the time, were very limited options. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to throw the discussion out and at least put it out there in some comments. And I think this, yeah, very good point. If we're gonna be spending on money, and it's a huge issue as far as I'm
It is,
concerned,
yeah, it is.
being a municipal government and that. But no, you do 20,000 here, then you can put it on a new building. No.
I'm
Thank
glad you
you.
raised it though. Council's
No,
right.
yeah, thank you. That's all.
Councillor Donaldson.
Just a question, I don't know if anybody can answer, but what if we had one or several serious complaints about wanting to get in the building, but actually couldn't get in the building? What kind of rights does this person have to force us to do something? Persons or person?
That's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
We are in some fashion protected by the grandfathering clauses of the rules and regulations of the building at the time it was constructed. However, there could, a complaint to the provincial government around lack of access would, I quite sure, be taken very seriously by the province and subsequently by us. We have received quite a few local complaints about lack of access to this building. What we've tried to do is accommodate them as best as we could. Right, so there is a way for somebody to come into the basement, for example, if they just required recreation services. So that has happened. We've also assisted taxpayers to pay their taxes without actually entering the building. So we have tried to serve the residents in a different way. It's not exactly fantastic.
No.
Right.
Another thing I was thinking of, a wheelchair candidate or a wheelchair counselor. I mean, we see them at our conferences. I mean, how would we accommodate somebody like that? I mean, when Emery Muse was here, it was
Yeah.
almost painful to watch him coming up those steps, like.
Was that right? Yes.
We have a duty to accommodate under HR legislation. So, for example, we had an employee that was diagnosed with MS. Now, that person's since no longer with the organization, but we would have had a duty to accommodate that condition. And so there are responsibilities that could still exist or could still come to our attention that we'd have to address. And I think, I think with the rules, I think everybody that is put rules together and has legislation, they usually give you a time frame to address the problem. That's the other side. Like, you can't expect an organization to drop $750,000 to solve the problem. They do give you time typically. But the other thing that we're at the mercy of is provincial legislation around accessibility. MLAs have had to change their offices if they weren't accessible. That was provincial legislation. That could easily happen to us. That could easily be a change in the law that we would have to expedite our plan.
Okay, just curious.
Good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good discussion. I think I don't know if anybody mentioned it, but I think council has been spinning their wheels here for a while, and we've been talking about this, and really nothing has been, we've been talking about it, and we've been talking about it. I know that staff has done some background work, and I'm sure that staff, if it was a real council priority, that staff could come up with a lot more recommendations and things quicker, because they would be instructed to, right? So I think that's something that we should think about for
It
the.
is a priority.
Yeah, well, I think something we should think about for maybe the next few upcoming meetings, maybe something we can,
Well,
Good idea.
so. All right. So we'll move on to number 7, which is correspondence and for information. We have the Yarmouth Argyle Home Support Service Annual Report that you've read. We have the Yarmouth International Airport Corporation Annual Report, Waste Check Enforcement Officers Report to March 2015, And D is the Yarmouth Area Industrial Commission minutes of March 16th. I guess if anybody has questions or concerns, or we can discuss them. If not, we'll move on to, don't see any lights, I guess. We can move on to number 8. There is no financial requests. Number 9 is notice of motion. Any notice of motion from anybody? Nope. Okay. Question period. Do we have questions from the audience?
I wouldn't have a question, but I have a comment, if you will entertain it.
Sure.
I want to congratulate council for the beautiful volunteer banquet that you had in West Pubnica. I thought it was very classy, and I felt a lot of pride from the citizens who were recognized by their council. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we can't, we can't thank enough our volunteers, because, these are the people that make our community what it is, and a very important part of the community, so, thank you. All right, number 11 is adjournment. Anybody care to adjourn? Okay, seconded?
Second.
All in favor? Contrary? Okay. So we're just gonna jump into